Acast, go up. The latest from Podnews.net with critically acclaimed, highly addictive CBC podcasts. Podcast hosting and monetization company Acast published its year-end financial report. In Q4 22, Acast claims 1.3 billion listens, up 22% year-on-year. Net sales for the quarter were up 35% year-on-year to $4.3 million. Podcast advertising in Australia in Q4 22 increased by 36% year-on-year, according to new data from Magellan AI and ARN's iHeart Podcast Network Australia. Amazon, Macca's and Paramount Plus were the top three advertisers. Podcast and audiobook subscription service Podimo is to expand to Mexico. The company says the number of users who consume podcasts in the country has increased by 70% in the last 4 years. Amazon Music has lost an exclusive podcast. Disgraceland is now available everywhere. It became an Amazon exclusive last year. The podcast is celebrating its 5-year anniversary this week and has just released the premiere for season 11 of the show. And being available everywhere drives the download numbers. Who knew? Podtrac now ranks Disgraceland as the #1 music podcast again. Immediate Media Co. is to join the Spotify Audience Network and will switch to Megaphone. The company was with Acast. PodX Group has acquired a majority stake in Filt, a Swedish independent podcast company with more than 1 million weekly listeners. It's the 4th acquisition for the company. Sports podcaster Blue Wire has added Fubo TV's podcasts to its slate for distribution and monetization. Blue Wire will sell packages including podcast and TV advertising, and the most listened to sports podcast in the US for the second half of last year is the Bill Simmons podcast, according to Edison Research, who published the top 3. The New York Times is the latest to write about the apparent demise of the industry. Podcast companies once walking on air feel the strain of gravity. If you're in too good a mood, then you can read that. We link to it from our show notes and our newsletter at podnews.net. Popcasts is a Portuguese podcast platform with more than 200 shows added in the past year. We link to that too. Podcast Movement Evolutions has made its 8th speaker announcement. Podnews will be there. The Podcast Hall of Fame won't hold an induction ceremony at Podcast Movement Evolutions this year. The event did take place last year, but it's unclear whether a lack of induction ceremony means new inductees won't be announced at all. The NAB show in April in Las Vegas will have more than 1,000 exhibitors, organisers say, more than 20% up year on year. However, in 2019, the show had 1,600. We'll be there too. Are you off to South by Southwest? Mark Miller and his team at LabelCoin are providing a podcasting studio with state-of-the-art equipment from Roland, where VIPs can hold meetings, record content, and enjoy free food and drinks. If you're interested, we link to a form to be considered today. The shortlist for the Publisher Podcast Awards has been announced. The ceremony is on April the 26th in London, and you should take 2 minutes now to fill in the Podnews report card. Your feedback goes back anonymously to the podcast platforms and helps them know where to improve. You'll find that at podnews.net/reportcard. In People News, Scotty Pitbull Myers has joined Gemini 13 as Vice President of Entertainment and Special Projects. He joins from Tesh Media Group, and Tim Ackerman has been hired as CFO for Audia, an audio AI company. And in podcast news, while Julia Louis-Dreyfus has announced a new show talking to women over 70, podcast host Sherilyn Starkey says she might not be a famous Hollywood actor, but her independent podcast, 50 Women Over 50, is worth a listen to. And unlike Louis-Dreyfus's, it's out now. The TJ Show is new from Gemini 13 this week and marks the launch of the company's personality network. The show is being produced for radio with many different formats and airing a podcast. TJ was one of the co-hosts of Elvis Duran and the Z100 Morning Show. Every Voice with Terence McKnight is new today from New York Public Radio's WQXR. Hosted by Terence McKnight, it spotlights marginalized voices in Western classical music. It launches during Black History Month, of course, and the debut season explores black representation in opera. This podcast is sponsored by CBC Podcasts. The team that brought you Let's Make a Sci-Fi is making a rom-com. Let's Make a Rom-Com is out now wherever you get your podcasts. And today only, the trailer comes next. And that's the latest. From our newsletter, to read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.
Love is cheesy.
She's a firefighter. He's an arsonist. Will they, won't they, put out the fire of their hearts?
Passion is awkward. One time I was being intimate with someone, and I tried to look at him in his eyes, and he said, "What?"
What? I'm working here?
Like, what? He went, what? Romance is cringy.
So give me something that's both sexy and romantic.
Lacrosse.
The sport?
But unfortunately, if you're going to write a romantic comedy, you're going to need all three. My name is Maddie Kelly. I'm a writer and comedian, and along with my co-hosts, Mark Chavez.
Almost every date I've been on has been a boat date or a boat-related date.
And Ryan Beal.
Remember Footsie?
Footsie.
Yeah.
Footsie was huge in the late 80s and early 90s.
We are setting out to write a romantic comedy movie script that is genuinely romantic.
Oh, I know what's romantic. A desperate, hungry kiss in the rain.
Why does it have to be hungry?
Yeah.
And actually funny.
It's not funny. It's just romantic.
It's a lot harder than you'd think.
Next.
Over the course of 8 episodes, you're going to hear us come up with our couple.
What if she was like embarrassingly good at close-up magic?
Make them fall in love.
The scene takes place before they've ever had sex.
Right.
Make them fall out of love. We're supposed to be having fun. You love sauerkraut.
Ironically! I love sauerkraut ironically!
And decide whether or not they should stay together.
And they kiss on set, and the director's like, "You're both fired, no PDA."
And when we run into trouble, we'll consult some serious rom-com experts.
I worked on Sex and the City, and I said he's just not that into you, and the rest is history.
People who've worked on everything from 10 Things I Hate About You,
She's the Man.
Mamma Mia,
Well, that was terrible.
Legally Blonde,
You Got Mail.
and Deadpool?
Yes, another famous rom-com.
And in the final episode, you'll get to hear what we've come up with. Our script we read by real actors for better or worse.
This is all gold.
Can 3 comedians come up with a fresh love story and make it funny? Let's find out. It's Let's Make a Rom-Com on CBC Podcasts.